Okay, here's the story of this YouTube channel in case you were wondering. Responses to the videos have already ranged from Jewish-born individuals who renounce their birthright to commentators who cannot divorce their Jewish identity from the entrenched, impenetrable notion that everyone hates them, even some other Jews, no matter what. The entirety of this project is from one person, me. It's a one-man band in every respect, so I have to talk about me a lot for you to understand what this all is and how it came to be. This channel's origin is actually in 1992-93 when I had a year-long Fulbright fellowship in Israel. The project as a visual ethnographer was to document Ethiopian and Russian immigrant Jews to Israel, as well as the indigenous Arab Muslim Bedouin. I lived in a desert kibbutz where only Jews lived, no Arabs, with a few exceptions like me, a non-Jew. Others included a few occasional non-Jewish volunteers from places like Denmark, who worked in the agricultural fields and such in support of the dreams of the Jewish nation. Not long into my stay in Israel, I began hearing disturbing stories about Israel's outrageous mistreatment of the Bedouin, an indigenous Arab people, citizens in fact in what is today called Israel. The stories were horrible enough that I decided to document them with a videotape camera. I didn't tell my Jewish Israeli academic hosts about this project. I'm not sure whether they would have actively tried to halt my effort or not, but I was certain that once word got out about it in the Jewish community, such an investigation into the Bedouin would be stopped or sabotaged. I wouldn't say that I did it in secret, or even that secrecy was possible, but I sure as hell wasn't going to advertise my sympathies for the Bedouin plight. In the process of investigating what I discovered to be the Bedouin tragedy, I was lucky to run across an unusual Bedouin man born in Israel who lived overseas and who had been educated in Europe. He was visiting his family for a short time and he spoke fluent English as well as Bedouin dialect Arabic and Hebrew. He was involved in the interviews in Arabic only. We always discussed what the questions should be, but he led many of the interviews as we crisscrossed the Negev desert, researching various horror stories. When I eventually left Israel, I had about 100 hours of videotape about Israel's systematic destruction of its Bedouin citizens, with many parallels to the original American assault on its Native American population. If you only have time to watch one thing at this channel, watch my documentary about the Bedouin. It was originally shot in the format of High 8, which was the poor man's broadcast quality video format, but it has deteriorated with many generations of videotape editing. I assumed I could find support of some kind to put the documentary together and get it seen somewhere, and I also naively presumed that venues like PBS and such would at least hear me out about what I, as an official Fulbright scholar on Israel, had discovered and documented, but no, I found zero interest, let alone support, from any significant quarter. I contacted all sorts of media organizations, grant groups, whatever. Once I edited up a version of the Bedouin documentary, I personally visited various Jewish organizations with videotape in hand. Routinely, I was immediately shown the door. I never found any organization or even any individual, Jewish or non-Jewish, to help me. A few friends and family members did eventually aid me with some simple additions, providing various voices for translations and such. The whole Bedouin documentary cost me somewhere around $25,000 out of my own pocket. I didn't get a nickel from anyone to help me create the film, ever. Finding no avenue to edit the material, I ended up buying a videotape editing system and began pasting together the documentary in my bedroom. Before that, however, I had paid for another Bedouin man to fly to America to translate all the interviews in Arabic that I had, Bedouin dialect. I also gave him $1,000 out of my own pocket for his help. He stayed with me in my one-bedroom apartment. I slept on a couch, and he was invaluable. He was a high school teacher in Israel, serving only Bedouin students, and he spoke fluent English, Arabic, and Hebrew. I must underscore here that he didn't have a political bone in his body. He didn't even know what he was going to be translating. He became a prisoner in my little apartment day and night and evenings until he translated all my interviews. Torture for him when he wasn't able to explore surrounding Los Angeles until a few days left in his visit. This project was incredibly difficult for me. I tape recorded his translation of what Bedouin said on tape with the running original videotape, and then had to later go through and meticulously listen to all this and edit it. I had no help for anything. It was a labor of moral conviction, nothing else. Economically, it was and has remained a personal disaster. I might add that I have never had any personal stake in the Arab-Israeli conflict. You witness grotesque injustice, and you complain about it, or you turn away and mind your own business, wherein your personal life is a hell of a lot easier. Once I had the documentary finished, I discovered total sensorial avoidance. People were clearly afraid to touch it. I knew I was finally beaten when I sent it to an Arab film festival in Seattle. A guy phoned me and said they loved the documentary, but they couldn't show it because they were afraid Jewish supporters of Israel would protest their festival, and they didn't want that distraction. I am not exaggerating. If even the Arab American community was self-censoring, I knew my project had reached its inevitable dead end, and I gave up. Years went by. In 2010, I found myself spending much of my time as a caregiver for my mother, who was failing with Parkinson's disease and dementia. I had no job, spent my days in such support, and I lived with her in a town where I knew no one. At some point, I decided that when a relative took her turn caring for my mom and I had freedom from the needs of my parent, I began a project to investigate what was for me the peculiar and for me moral riddle of Jewish identity, the Holocaust, and Israel. Broke, jobless, I pulled out $6,500. That was my total retirement fund for a college job I had a few years earlier, and used that to travel across America to interview various scholars and experts about the world of Jewish identity in Israel. That money paid for the gas and motel or campground. On rare occasion, I crashed at a friend's house. Sometimes, depending on where I was, I saved money and I slept in the car. I remember that was the case in Boston when the next morning I interviewed Noam Chomsky. No organization and nobody supported this interview project. I hadn't a nickel from anyone. That remains the case. No one even knew about it except those I contacted for interviews. I became very well read about the Jewish world after my year in the Jewish state. I knew the parameters of what struck me as the most important issues of Jewish identity, the Holocaust, and Israel, and antisemitism. I knew who to ask for an interview. Some to come, you'll see, are extremely controversial, so I'm building a backup video channel at Rumble, which supposedly is less sensorial. So well read nonetheless, I was still mystified, befuddled by all of this. I was pleasantly surprised and grateful that with the foregrounding of some of my past academic accomplishments, most people of various political, religious, ethnic, or ideological persuasions that I contacted were willing to grant me an interview. Most were Jewish, and many interviews are yet to be posted online. There are over 60 of them. As these scholars and others accepted my requests, I plotted my unusual research journey across America. This was before the Zoom interview on the internet universe. I physically went to interview sites. I set my camera on a tripod, pointed it at the person being interviewed, and asked questions. That was the totality of my resources. I aimed to collect a wide variety of insight and commentary and present an open, honest, documentary inquiry into Jewish identity, the Holocaust, and Israel. There would be critical dimensions to it, diving into the fact that even dissident Jews are forbidden to question some monolithic taboos. Such a project would be fraught with peril, sensorial, reputational, and otherwise, but I didn't care. I figured that I couldn't lose any personal ground when, at that stage in my life, I didn't have anything anyway. The interview series went well. but my mother reached the point where she had to go to a nursing home. I suddenly faced homelessness, but was saved with a job offer in another state. The prospect of a film about Jewish identity disintegrated with the necessity for me to rebuild my life from scratch, broke, now a fairly old man, in an unfamiliar place and knowing no one. I started out living in a campground. 15 years passed. I even lived in my pickup truck for 6 months to get the money to save rent to put the down payment towards a long-term mortgage on a house. I married a lovely woman. I'm now retired. Long story about censorship there, per another subject. Live on a tight Social Security-based fixed income, and finally decided, with the Israeli atrocities in Gaza and the walls collapsing that girded the routine accusation of antisemitism, that internet technology had grown enough to where it seemed like it was time to post what I have struggled to offer the world, whether the world liked what I had to offer or not. Again, my thanks to all the scholars and interviewees whose generosity in sharing their insights and research to a relative nobody is deeply respected and appreciated. The 60 interviews to be posted here represent a wide variety of opinion and points of view, and sharing information and expertise is what a truly great scholar should actually do and be. I may still someday do the film I hope to do, probably not, but in the meantime, their full interviews are here, firmly rooted in their original context. No editorial manipulations by me. But to those who have already routinely trashed and insulted me here, derided me as a bigot for literally, merely asking questions, and who will undoubtedly ridicule the background story of this channel as a pile of lies, I am extremely bitter about all this. There has been no reward for doing such projects, nothing at all, when the usual wall of censorial indifference and fear has made it all an enormous waste of time. I'm not speaking about personal gain or advancement. I'm speaking only of the reward of simple satisfaction in presenting my documentary and these interviews to open public debate in the world. That's the smallest of rewards, but even this has not existed. It has been a frustrating, decades-long war to find a forum to open up dialogue about these subjects, and the truth of the matter is, I have no doubt that the battle is not over. It has just begun, for me or anyone. After all, there are many who don't care about the mass murder in Gaza, and that core who insistently deny it is something real. And of course, some form of censorship may strike this video platform here too. Any investigative inquiry into Jewish identity, the Holocaust, and Israel is enormously perilous, even if the spokesman or woman is an expert in their respective field, even if they are Jewish, even if they support the Jewish state but say forbidden things. This video channel exists to shed light from different perspectives, not only mine, about some profoundly important issues that literally have impact throughout much of the world. Hopefully, in the end, there are more people out there wishing to listen, learn, and debate, rather than powerful censors who ceaselessly endeavor, day and night, to block information exchange. But truly, I can testify from my own experience so far with enormous wasted time, wasted money, and wasted energy in speaking to indifferent or censorial fortress walls only. Nothing, even an eventual result of nothing, will surprise me.